As I said earlier, it is a pleasure to see you, as always, but particularly in January. We are happy to have you here at Council. We appreciate the advice that you have to give and also the level of energy and enthusiasm that you bring. This is a particularly interesting time to be in Washington. We are in transition, as all of you know, and for us that usually is somewhat eventful, but we have we are awaiting now, and you'll hear about this later in my talk, but we are awaiting the confirmation of the Secretary nominee for Department of HHS. Since we're part of the Department of HHS, that's the piece of the process that we look at the most closely in moving forward. We also are the largest part of, let me just remind you of that, we're the largest component of the Department of Health and Human Services. So we will probably receive early attention to secure the position of NIH director. As you realize, the NIH director is the only political appointee that we have at the NIH. And so we do need to await the moving forward, the information that we have relative to that position. I do have a slide for that later in my talk. Okay, we're live. So I will move forward at this point and talk a little bit about the budget update and the other updates that we have. As I said, we're still very early in the transition, and so there's a great deal of information that we don't have, or spoken differently, there's a limited amount of information that we have yet moving forward. So let me go over what we do have. The budget process I've reviewed with you before, and this is the recent appropriations history for us. We are currently under what is known as a continuing resolution until April 28th of this year, and that means that we're operating at what we call current year levels, which is to say fiscal year 2016 levels. The restriction is that we, under a continuing resolution, are not allowed to start major new initiatives, but we are able to maintain the pace that we've been operating at. So we will be in that mode until April 28th, until the new administration has a chance to review the budget and to look at the possibility of one, either extending the continuing resolution or more probably giving us a budget. And we would be pleased to have a budget because there is a projected increase for us in the budget, which we do not have at the continuing resolution level. Okay. We also, since last we met, you had heard about the 21st Century Cures Act. That was a bill that was pending. And that bill has now been enacted into law by Congress, and it does provide certain specific funds for NIH over the next several years. These are both 2017 projected funding and over a 10-year period of time cumulative. And these are what we call targeted or earmarked funds, and they are targeted or earmarked for several major projects that you have been reading about in the paper. One of these is the Cancer Moonshot, which is actually getting the largest share of much of the total funding. And the Cancer Moonshot, as you know, has been designed in order to devise new and creative ways to address the issue of cancer. The BRAIN initiative has been started about 4 years ago and had a projected budget that had fallen a bit behind. And so this earmark funds in this particular bill will restitute that and then move it forward. The precision medicine is an initiative that is a White House initiative, the previous White House initiative, and that is something that you heard about when Eric Dishman came to speak to us about the initiative itself. So that is also earmarked for funds as we move forward. And a new item that you had not heard about previously that is part of this 21st Century Cures Act is the area of regenerative medicine. And so that's an area which has received a great deal of attention, and it is thought that that will benefit the number of veterans that we have and will be very helpful in that regard. So we look forward to hearing more about that. These are just projected projected budget numbers and projected ideas at this point, so I don't have a lot more detail for you. Looking at our budget, when we get the budget, the allocation of budget is, as you have seen before, but just to look at the bottom line, the majority of the funds, our research project grants is 66%, centers of 4%, other research is primarily K awards, and also the training at 6%, and more than half of the research and development funds. So the bottom line is that more than 80% of our funds do go out to the extramural community to support research projects and training. The remainder of funds stay in, and those actually benefit extramural from a large standpoint in that RMS covers the review of all grant applications, management of grants, and so on, as well as all the activities that the program directors engage in. And the intramural program you have heard a great deal about in the last council, and that really is designed to complement the extramural activities and to provide additional interactive opportunities. So several things I would mention to bring you up to date with things that are happening in the department. And I alluded to a few minutes ago that our nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services is Senator Tom Price, who is Senator from Georgia. He has been very much involved in health care and, in fact, in bills that were introduced in his term as senator to repeal or replace the ACA with his several suggested forms of ways of addressing health care. He also he's an orthopedic surgeon, has been on the faculty at Emory University in Atlanta, and is very conversant with most of the aspects of healthcare, has been very active in that. So he is considered to have a really high probability of being confirmed, although we never can completely predict. He is actually, his confirmation hearing, the first is scheduled for today, so we should know by the end of the day how things go. He's already appeared before the HELP committee and other committees as well. So he is is President Trump's nominee for Secretary of HHS. As I said earlier, we are the largest component of HHS, so he would be the person who we would report to as an NIH. Seema Verma has been nominated to head CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. She is actually a healthcare consultant who has founded her own firm and has consulted very heavily with and interacted with Medicare and Medicaid services in terms of many of the programs that are part of those agencies. So she is very familiar with the healthcare arena and is expected to take the post without difficulty. I just went through a little bit of the 21st Century Cures Act that was passed. I focused on the scientific pieces of it, but there are other aspects of the 21st Century Cures Act that do impact us or do give us suggestions and directions. So let me just quickly review those so you have a sense of what some of the other aspects of the bill involve. So one of the issues they're very concerned in is investing in the next generation of researchers. What does it take to prepare them? What are we looking for? Also, and everyone around the room I'm sure will be excited to hear this spoken out loud, that there is a serious effort to reduce the administrative burden for researchers. And we are right there with you, that we recognize that it's important to pay attention to safety, and it's important to look at rigor and reduce reproducibility, but we also recognize that we need to be mindful of the burden that researchers are being asked to bear. There is a component that relates to data sharing, and that allows the NIH director, i.e. NIH, to require awardees to share data that is generated from NIH-funded research. And you know there's been a move in this direction for some number of years now. And so now it has been enacted into law. that now, and we don't have a great deal of detail on that now as to what type of data, et cetera, but ideally, data that is obtained from federally supported research should be available to all of the public. And so there is a committee working on what does that involve, because obviously privacy needs to be protected as well. Also, we once again have heard that we should be focusing on high-risk, high-reward research that NIH is often criticized for being a little bit on the conservative side. And so there is always the quest to be able to search out and to identify and fund high-risk, high-reward research that will have the potential to transform the field. The Eureka Prize competitions, you may be familiar with the fact that NIH was, during this past administration, given permission to have contests in which prizes would be given. But that was a very limited authority that we had. And so now with this provision of this law, we will, across the NIH, be able to have those contests and be able to engage in prize competitions. Enhancing the rigor and reproducibility of scientific research is something that we have been focusing on very heavily for the last several years. Many of you have been seeing those initiatives coming out and seeing the guidance in that. So that, once again, has been underscored, the level of importance in this bill. Increased inclusion of underrepresented populations in clinical trials, again, remains a challenge for us and one that we must master. As you know, that is particularly important to us in this institute and across NIH, and our speakers this entire afternoon will be addressing that. And further, an emphasis on both national and global pediatric research, a recognition that for us as a country and the amount of money and the healthcare system spends on children, our pediatric population, that we still have an unacceptable mortality compared to many of our countries who are considered less well developed than we are. So that there is that national focus, but also including global as well. We, HHS, Department of HHS we have determined to provide more information to the public about clinical trials. Once again, the theme that we are a public agency supported by public funds. And so what we find out and discover really is on behalf of all of our citizens' nations, as well as our citizens as well as the world, and that should be available to everyone. So one of the steps that is being undertaken is to make certain that all clinical trials that we fund and encouragement for others, that clinical trials will be entered on the NIH.gov clinical trials site. And most of ours are in fact on there now, but it was a strong suggestion. It was not a requirement. It is now a requirement. Not only that the trials themselves be enlisted and enrolled there, but that the results of those trials also be. And that includes negative trials as well. There's always the sense of, well, we didn't find out what we're looking for, so we won't bother to enroll that or to add that information. And that will be changing as we move forward. Now, moving a little bit closer to home, we, in the current transition, we have been notified that the NIH director is being held over into the new administration. We don't know. Francis has sent us a note saying that that's all the information we have. He's not quite sure what that means, how to interpret it, but it does mean that he is still here as we move forward. So we'll keep you posted as we hear more information. Major General James Gilman has been selected as the Chief Executive Officer of the Clinical Center. He has a very long and distinguished career in the military, 39 years. He is retired. Was most recently posted at Frederick, Maryland. He is a cardiologist, an internist with cardiology as a subspecialty, has a long history of involvement in clinical studies, and is known as a superb organizer. So we are very excited that he's here. He's quite enthusiastic about being here, and he started the first week in January, and he is not in the least daunted having taken on that major responsibility. So we look forward to working closely with him as our intramural research program is largely focused in the clinical center. There are a number of new requirements for clinical trials. Most of these are familiar to you, so I won't go into great detail, as they've all been published from Open Mike, from Mike Lauer in the extramural OER. But just to put them all on one slide, as opposed to peppering with you. So it is now clinical training, good clinical practice training is required for all people involved in clinical trials. That includes all of our program staff and so on. And that took effect as of January 1st, 2017. So everyone around the room has now completed that training. We also are requiring dissemination of clinical trial information, that trials should be registered within 21 days. The results should be submitted within 1 year of the completion of the trials, and that is also effective January of this year. That has been a requirement for the intramural program, but it is now a requirement for all of our clinical trials. And also, and this is something that despite the challenge it poses, is you will probably be pleased about, that we are requiring the use of single IRBs for multi-site studies. And that date, actually the effective date for that, because of the complicated nature of getting this launched, has been extended to September of 2017. But it is a requirement now, so that all new studies will need to comply with this. And we've been doing this on an experimental basis with RFAs, but it appears to be working, and we feel that it will greatly simplify the process of getting trials launched and getting studies started. A reminder that when you look for opportunities, that you want to make sure to look for them NIH-wide as well as institute specifically. Now, looking a little bit closer to home within the Institute, we have 5 retiring council members this session. This will be the last session for 5 of our members, and we will miss them. You have certainly been put to the task over the last 4 years. We've kept you extremely busy and are most grateful for your input. These members include Cynthia Barnes-Boyd, who has brought with her the community-based research expertise that we have so valued and really has been particularly important at this phase of our development. Donna Hathaway, former dean from University of Tennessee, Julian Inouye, one of our experts in health disparities, Bernadette Melnick, who, despite being a new dean at the time, has managed to make most of the meetings and has brought with her her marvelous COPE study and helped us think about healthier lives for teens and their coping skills. And Mariana Tomek-Koenig, who sends her apologies that she had a family caregiving situation she needed. She, as you know, is caregiver for her family who is across the pond, as it were, and couldn't make it, and sends her best to all of you. Now, you realize that because you are now accomplished council members, that doesn't necessarily mean that you will not be asked to help us out. We consider you emeritus, and so we tend to ask you to do things for us because you've already been cleared, and we know you already know the ropes. And to that end, I would like to announce that Cynthia Barnes-Boyd has been designated a member of the Council of Councils. Recall that that is the group that makes the determination, helps to make the determination about what applications and what trans-NIH Common Fund activities will be funded. And so we're very pleased that Cynthia will not be bored in her retirement from council. In fact, orientation is Thursday and the first meeting is Friday. So, and we know you'll enjoy that. So good luck to you. We're also very excited and pleased to announce that the Presidential Early Career Awards were announced this last about 2 weeks ago, and one of our investigators, Jacqueline Taylor from Yale University, was named an early career awardee, Presidential Career Award. And this is very exciting. There are only 21 in the entire country. And so we're extremely excited for Jackie. She is well known to you. And her research focuses on the cardiac health and health disparities of midlife populations, and she's now beginning to explore some of the teen populations. And so we're very pleased and excited for her. She has been a longtime productive researcher in her young career. So we're very pleased for her and look forward to her trip to Washington to meet with the president. We have a number of new features on the website that I will just mention a few of those to you. One of these is the Stories of Discovery that we have launched, which is a new feature which really focuses on some of the interesting and productive research programs that that many of you around the table and across the country and the globe are engaged in. And so we want to use this as an opportunity to bring attention to them. And so if you'll check the website for that, you'll see that will be a changing display. Also, we have a special focus on end-of-life and palliative care research that summarizes all of the programs that we're funding in that area and the new initiatives. It basically serves as a summary because we had that information available, but not in as convenient a form. We also have a provider perspective that is new to the website, which is focusing on the pediatric palliative care portion of the end-of-life and palliative care. And that is an interesting feature because it involves patients, family members, and also different team members who talk about providing palliative care from their perspective, whether it's the social worker, the clinical nurse, et cetera. So it does bring in some of the important aspects to consider in that situation. And so we feel that that will be extremely helpful for our audiences across the country who are increasingly dealing with these issues. I want to announce, this is the first public announcement, we are sponsoring, hosting a symposium in April 25th, 2017, which focuses on the intramural program. You recall, most of you were here last council to hear the presentations of the intramural scientists and also participated in the NIH Research Festival during your time here at council, which we co-sponsored. During that week of council. And so, but this will be a symposium to focus on the research that's going on and also the partnerships, because our program is very trans-NIH, and so it will focus on with our scientists and their partners across the campus. It will also be videotaped, so it will be available for those of you that can't make it. But check our website because registration will be available and you can register online for that. So we want to make you aware of that. It will be, it'll be a first-time event for us hosting nearly all-day symposia. So please do. It will focus on the research of the intramural program. So it's the symptom science of GI disturbances, traumatic brain injury, and fatigue. The upcoming NINR Director's Lecture will be March 2nd and May 23rd. We'll be hearing from Dr. Linda Aiken, who is a well-known researcher from University of Pennsylvania, whose work has focused on workforce issues and also mortality and morbidity issues related to nurse staffing and also patient outcomes related to staffing. It's very pivotal work and has been she's done several landmark studies that really have made an impact on the care provided across the country and more recently internationally, as her studies are international. Kate Lorig, as you know, is a pioneer in self-management and pioneered the arthritis self-management program out of Stanford originally, which has now been upscaled and has been adopted by the National Arthritis Foundation and also now internationally. Subsequent to that, she has also focused on patient populations with diabetes and other chronic illnesses, and has made a real impact in improving the quality of life for people with chronic illness. So we're looking forward to hearing both of them in the spring. Our videotape for the previous director's lecture, Ellen Goodman, the conversation we're not having, focusing on end-of-life and palliative care, is available now on our YouTube channel. That, by the way, was the largest attended lecture that we have had so far. We had the overflow room, and so it's an interesting video. Would also bring your attention to a study that is coming out of our intramural program by Jessica Gill, one of our tenure track investigators, who has found that she's discovered a biomarker that may predict recovery time for sports concussions. It is acute plasma tau related to prolonged return play after concussion. It's a very interesting study. It's published in the Journal of Neurology and has been receiving a lot of press. She's been interviewed by NPR, Nature Magazine, and Science wrote an article featuring it. And so it's really gotten a lot of attention and is a very nice way to flesh out her program, which is primarily focused on PTSD, but also traumatic brain injury. So we're very excited. Jessica, as you may recall, is one of our Lasker scholars. We also have addressed more specifically the palliative and end-of-life care and cardiorespiratory diseases, that certain areas, certain parts of this field really do require extra and specialized attention, and this is one of them. So we have just recently published a paper that does address those issues. A review of our funding opportunities. Again, these are funding opportunities that you have participated in developing and approving at Council, and so we want to make sure that you see the outcome of these activities as well as others. So I bring your attention to the Summer Genetics Institute, which the application deadline is March of this year, March 1st. And again, that is a 1-month course that does provide lectures and hands-on experience in the laboratory for students who want to learn more about genetics, who want to incorporate that into their research programs, their clinical practices, or their teaching activities. And so this is very popular. The students the graduates of this program tend to do very well in terms of career development and funding. So, and the second course I would bring to your attention is the Methodologies Bootcamp on Precision Health from Omics to Data Science. This year that will be August 7th to 11th. It's a 1-week course. It is very popular. Registration opens early April, and if you intend to go or know anyone who does intend to go, please register immediately because it does fill up in a very short period of time. We're working with FAES to develop a lottery so that, literally it filled up in about 20 minutes last time. So, and we had close to 150 students. So please, if you have any intentions of attending, register early. We have 2 new graduate partnership fellows who have joined the Division of Intramural Research, Katie Edwards from UVA and Stephanie Prescott from Ohio. We are very pleased that they're here to work with us in the symptom science area. One of them will be working in the area of GI symptoms with Wendy Henderson, and the other will be working with Jessica Gill. I mentioned earlier that we had co-chaired the Research Festival for this year. Just coincidentally, that was the 30-year anniversary of the Research Festival, coincident with the 30-year anniversary of our institute. But it really was, very exciting. 2 of our tenure tracks participated in panels presenting their work, and we had a total of 8 posters from our intramural program, which, given the size, that's a pretty impressive percent of presentations. We are now, just to let you know, we know that we're in the 21st century. We are now on LinkedIn. And truthfully, we joke that at NIH sometimes we get dragged kicking and screaming into these technologies, but this one actually seems to, we're tweeting and we're in LinkedIn, and I don't know, we're not Snapchatting yet, but I'm sure that'll be not far in the future. Anyway, but please check us out. And again, the 30th anniversary was really a marvelous event. The scientific presentations were very exciting, and we had a lot of positive feedback from that. The strategic plan was released at that time, and we have had, I'm losing track of the number of downloads, but within the first week we had thousands, literally thousands of downloads from. And so given how many we passed out during that week, it was a little surprising that there still was anyone left to get it. So it's difficult to be able to cover all of the territory, and I don't want to just stand here listing things for you. So we do have a handout available to supplement this information for you. And with that, I will close the presentation for this afternoon. As always, we remind you to bookmark the website for the latest news and information from the Institute. Thank you so much.